What's up, welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of Euphoria Season 3 on HBO. It truly feels like an eternity since Euphoria was last on our screen. Season 2 came out back in 2022, nearly 4-year wait between seasons. And it got to the point where we were even questioning if Euphoria would ever return for a Season 3, given the rapidly rising stardom of the majority of the show's cast, as well as the ups and downs, the trials and tribulations of Sam Levinson's career as a writer and creator. And frankly, it feels like a ton has happened since Euphoria Season 2. And I'm excited to get into the first episode of Season 3, which I really enjoyed. But we really have to set the table here just because so much has happened. And I really think this show is going to go down as like one of the essential, series of the last 10 years or so. And a big part of that is with this show's cast. It's easy to make the comparison, but it does feel like in many respects, Euphoria is this generation's Friends. When your three leads are Zendaya, Sydney Sweeney, and Jacob Elordi, aka three of the biggest stars of their generation, all together on one television show, it's hard to overstate exactly how rare this is. And the depth of the cast really does not stop with the big three there. Of course, you also have Maud Apatow and Hunter Schafer, Barbie Ferreira, Austin Abrams, all people with successfully growing careers. In fact, the person I've been expecting more of that we haven't really gotten a lot of has been Alexa Demi, Maddie, on Euphoria. She just doesn't seem to be pursuing too many roles from what I can see, but I've always been a big fan of her performance on the show and was expecting her to go on to bigger things as well, like her co-stars, but she hasn't, at least to this point. Of course, the Sam Levinson side of Euphoria can't be ignored here. In between Euphoria seasons, Levinson, of course, made The Idol for HBO, starring The Weeknd, and that show did not go well at all, and Levinson has become a bit of a controversial figure. Some people would call him an edgelord, however you want to describe him. There's been some reporting, mixed reporting to say the least, on the safety of his sets and his relationship with his talent, specifically Barbie Ferreira in this instance. A lot going on with what he does. But I've always had a kind of a charitable view to a lot of what he does because I do think of him as an ambitious and audacious and risk-taking creator and writer. And those things didn't pan out in the case of The Idol, but I certainly appreciated what he was trying to achieve with that at the very least. But I've been very happy with the first 2 seasons of Euphoria, and the concept of what will Euphoria do in its 3rd season has been a bit of an open question. There's been a lot of talk of what shape this season would take place and what was it going to be. At one point we were hearing Zendaya's Rue would be like a detective. We always knew there would be a time skip of sorts, given most of this core cast is closer to 30 years old than they are closer to the high school age they were previously portraying in the first 2 seasons. So we always knew there was some kind of change coming. And I'm not sure exactly if we know quite where season is going to go, but I'm certainly along for the ride no matter what. I think my biggest reservation with Euphoria Season 3 is that it's short. And you have to figure that has something to do with the scheduling, with this really difficult to manage cast. I mean, heck, even Coleman Domingo, who has always been a notable aspect on this show as Rue's sponsor, even he has a career that's never been hotter than it is right now. The show also was due to change due to Eric Dane's rapidly declining health at the time when they were making this 3rd season. He has since passed away from ALS, most tragically. And of course, August Cloud passed away a few years back at this point, and his character of Fezco, they've decided to keep alive on the show, telling us in the premiere that he's in prison for 30 years, which is not exactly surprising given what happened with him in the season 2 finale. I'm really happy that Euphoria is back for season 3 because this very return was an open question given how significant the star power has risen for all of the big stars on this show. I'm eager to learn how this show has changed with this time skip as its characters are long since away from high school and doing different things. I think the biggest pain point with Euphoria season 3 will be if they're able to tie all these story threads together, but I'm certainly looking forward to seeing how that plays out. The show has a very distinct visual style from Sam Levinson. I think the filmmaking, there's certainly a cinematic quality to how the show moves, and the acting at the top has always been tremendous. Zendaya doing everything as Rue, Sydney Sweeney in exactly the right type of role as Cassie, Alexa Demi has been an iconic social media viral clip machine as Maddie. Looking forward to more of that this season. Jacob Elordi's Nate, I guess, is the one I'm most curious about, just because Elordi's public persona and most of his other roles of late have not really been like the dirtbag that is the Nate character. Sydney Sweeney's Cassie deciding to become an OnlyFans model. Maybe it's an obvious plot point, but it makes a lot of sense for the show. We'll see how that pans out. I'm sure Nate will be incredibly okay with it as it gets going. But I think this premiere had a lot to it, and it felt like a show with a clear point of view, despite really changing a lot of what's going on. All these characters are separated and in different locations most of the time. From everything we've heard about this season, it sounds like Levinson took some big swings with the plotting, so I'm excited to ride the wave with this one. And it really feels like this will be the final season of Euphoria. They haven't said that, but it's really hard to imagine them being able to pull this off again. And who knows, maybe that'll become a lot more evident by the time this show pans out. But the big three here, they're movie stars at this point, right? And I just don't know if they have the time to make Euphoria anymore. Now, alternatively, maybe if they waited another 4 years and then came back together for another show that was really drastic, who knows? Again, we're really jumping the shark here. We have to see how the season plays out. But it's unlike anything else on TV right now, due to who's involved and how young and rising all these, A-listers are. I think right away with the first scene here of watching Rue doing a drug mule run, down into Mexico, watching her drive over a border wall with these, kind of ramp devices, and then getting her car stuck directly on top of the border wall between Mexico and Texas. An incredible visual. I mean, gosh, it really harkened back to like Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul type stuff right there. Tremendous stuff. I mean, the metaphor of Rue being directly between one and the other, I think, was quite clear. But I mean, that's something few shows actually pull off and actually looks that good. To actually film that and have it look as good as it does, again, speaks to a more cinematic quality and goal for the show. That was really cool. And then we get a lot of Rue voiceover of her telling us about basically becoming indebted to Lori, get some flashback there. And I think the drug mule scene of watching her ingest multiple drug balloons, terrifying thing to watch, frankly. Zendaya really committed in that scene. We get introduced early on to Toby Wallace, newcomer on this season, who is in, Lori's drug operation. Toby Wallace, I think, is a very intriguing new character here. If you've seen him act in previous movies, like Baby Teeth or something like that, he's a real firecracker of a performer. So I assume we'll get some cool stuff with him. But again, speaking to the Levinson of it all, we watch Rue come back to the nest with a bunch of balloons inside of her, and then we smash cut to a pasta dinner scene. And I mean, the visual sight gag there is, again, it's obvious, but you can't help but tip your cap again to the audaciousness of the things this show does sometimes. Just like, the candlelit dinner between Cassie and Nate at their home. They're living together, they're engaged, and there's 30 candles in the frame. It's crazy. The early source of conflict between Cassie and Nate is over their wedding, with Cassie wanting to ball out all the way, specifically on the topic of floral arrangements that cost the neighborhood of $50,000, and Nate, who is, we learn, taken over / inherited his father's construction business. Nate is a little more cash strapped and working towards business goals and doesn't want to do that. Cassie throws out the idea of becoming an OnlyFans model to pay for these things as a way to get paid quick, as she says. Again, it's just a plot point that I think makes a ton of sense for this character, and both these characters are going to lead to a lot of drama. Of course, the introduction to Cassie this episode is her doing some kind of TikTok challenge in a scantily clad, dog outfit for TikTok. I think in general, just the concept of Cassie post-college and Cassie trying to find her way in the world. Can't wait to see what happens. Get a little bit of Alexa Demi. We learn she is in, kind of artist management, but on the lower end of the totem pole, and she's actually working from time to time in close proximity with Lexi, Maud Apatow's character, who is now a PA for a nighttime soap being led by Sharon Stone, another new cast member on the series. Nighttime soap, pretty uncommon these days. I don't know how realistic some of their roles in terms of their jobs are. It's been a few years out of high school, hard to say. But we get good table setting, with all of them. Again, I'm really rooting for a lot of Maddie this season just because I've always loved Demi's performance on the show. We don't see any Hunter Schafer as Jules this season. Very curious what's going to happen with her character just because her relationship with Rue, and from an antagonist point of view, her relationship with Nate and Nate's dad, big aspect of early Euphoria, right? But those characters have kind of broken apart, following Rue's relapse, in season 2. How's she going to fit into the season? Of course we don't know. We're also introduced early on, Rue, after she has to abandon her car in the first scene on the border wall, she kind of lucks into finding refuge with this completely off the grid, Bible loving, extended farm family. And later on, Rue talks with her sponsor, Coleman Domingo's character, decides to kind of adopt the faith and become a Christian, and she starts listening to audiobooks while she's driving Uber in between her drug runs. Curious how faith is going to stick around this season. Again, that's a thorny thing. Can Levinson pull that off? We'll find out. I did like that in the first scene when she's thinking about this, she at least points out a lot of the hypocrisy found in the Bible and its treatment of same-sex relations and things like that. So we'll see where that goes. And then, from there, Rue gets tasked by Toby Wallace's character to deliver some drugs to this big house up on a hill somewhere in like the LA area. I'm not sure exactly where that's supposed to be. It's outside of the city. And it ends up being the home of Alamo Brown, who's a strip club magnate. He's basically having a party with a bunch of girls. And we find out that those drugs were actually laced, and Rue, of course, did not know. She was just the messenger. But Rue wants to reinvent herself and maybe get in the strip club business, So I think some of those scenes are pretty cool. The apple on her head, not actually that tense, Zendaya is not going to get clocked in the first episode of this third season. So still cool. Marshawn Lynch has also joined the cast. He works for Alamo Brown or is a friend of some kind. Who knows how big of a part we'll have in the show, but he was there. And yeah, we're off, right? Happy to be back. This is gonna be fun. Let me know, what did you think of Euphoria's season 3 return? What are you most looking forward to seeing with this show? What are you happy to be back with? Let me know. And for more TV reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.